Hi, my name is Kelvin Charles, aka Network WizKid, and thank you for inviting me along today to speak to you about cybersecurity and how to navigate into the industry. Today's talk is going to be discussing a little bit about myself, my journey up until now, how I managed to get into the cybersecurity industry, as well as what I'm actually doing now. And I'm going to also hopefully provide some insight as to how you can also get into the cybersecurity industry and answer the questions that have been provided to me, which will hopefully help motivate, inspire, and guide you along your journey in this cybersecurity field. If you are looking to get into cybersecurity, looking at Cisco products, or networking in general, then some of these videos may be of use to you. I have been doing these videos pretty much from when I first started out in my journey, and still actively do these videos now. So there's probably going to be content out there that's useful for everybody at different levels. I have videos on cybersecurity and general networking. I have videos around CCNP and CCIE security labs. I have a series called Knowledge Transfer Labs, and these focus primarily on sharing my knowledge with different technologies and different areas of technology. So some of those might be useful to you as well. I've got short video series, which I like to call nuggets. These are quick videos that show you how to do things really quick. I've got presentations and Q&A sessions from previous sessions, and more than likely this session will also be put into this playlist, so you can always come on my YouTube channel and watch it back. I also have vlogs, which I try to update as often as I can. They basically focus on me as an individual and what I'm doing in my current life, as well as other interesting things. Sometimes I do giveaways, so if you are interested in winning some swag now and again, do make sure you subscribe and hit that notifications bell so that you are always notified of new content. A new series that I've just started focuses on 100% cybersecurity with myself. So this will be focusing on cybersecurity in general, ethical hacking and things like that. So if you're interested in that area of cybersecurity, then I will be posting more videos on here shortly. And then I've just got my popular uploads as well. So do make sure you check that out and subscribe. I'd be really happy if you could do so. I also have Twitter, Instagram, and I also have a website. I'm very active on Twitter. My links you can see in there. We'll also share them as well. So do make sure you give us a follow. My website, I post a lot of articles on there in regards to content that I've posted on YouTube, and also content that's not posted on YouTube. So do make sure you check that out. There's some useful content on there. You can also subscribe to the mailer so that you receive notifications every time I post. So I just want to start off with giving you a little bit of a background as to kind of who I am, my journey up until now, which will also include how I actually came to get into cybersecurity. Now, I take my hat off to you because you're already looking at exploring the cybersecurity industry and getting into the field. So just before I start, it's my understanding that you are students between the ages of 16 and 19, and you're looking to explore or get into the cybersecurity industry. So salute to you for actually being on this journey at such an early stage in your life. When I was your age, my career if you like, was nowhere near being mapped out. So salute to you guys for actually being in a position where you know what you hopefully want to do and moving to. So with that, I'll just start by giving you some background into kind of who I am and my journey into the cybersecurity industry. So it's only right that I start off at 16 years old, and that's the age that I left school. So I left high school. I finished school with some GCSEs. I didn't get the best grades, and that is more so down to myself, and at the time not enjoying education. So I wasn't the best in school, and anybody that knows me and went through school with me will know that I wasn't the most well-behaved child at the time in school. And I think part of the reason why was because I didn't enjoy education. I always thought I was missing something outside of school, and I would do anything not to be in education. And if that meant getting kicked out of school for whatever reason, whether that be being the class clown or just doing not as I'm told, then I would kind of find a way not to be in school. So I think from year 9 or year 10, I was put into YMCA, and for those that don't know, it's kind of they might call it something different today, but it's kind of like an outside of school environment where you still are expected to learn, but you kind of take the school environment away from you, so you get a chance to play games and do more social things as opposed to what you would do in school. So I was put into one of those a couple of days a week, and then the remaining times I would be in school, but on occasion I wasn't allowed into some of my classes because of my behaviour. So I was sat in, I think you call them isolation these days, and I would do my lessons from there. Looking back now, it was really silly, but at the time, as I said, I didn't enjoy education. I didn't want to be in school. I thought it was great. I thought doing something different as opposed to what my other classmates was doing was great. Anyway, that kind of led me to get my GCSEs, but not do as well as I could have done. And after school, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't really know what I wanted to do moving forward. And at 16 years old, I thought I was grown. I thought I knew everything, and I thought, yep, I've finished school now. I'm out into the big bad world, and I can kind of stand on my own 2 feet. But looking back now at 16 years old, and probably the early 20s, all of that was a big learning curve for me, and we'll get on to why a little bit later. So I finished school and ended up going on to study joinery at college, Leeds Building College, and I did enjoy joinery. I did enjoy using my hands to build things, and I think part of me going on to do joinery was also because at the time some of my friends was also going on to do the same thing. So it was a little bit of not understanding really what it is that I wanted to do as a career, and also following my friends at the time, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. At the time I thought I was good with my hands and with joinery, so I thought that was what I wanted to do. So that was I believe it may have been a 3-year course or a 2-year at most. And a year into the actual course, I decided that it wasn't for me. and decided again that education I didn't really think was for me, and ended up dropping out. Again, I didn't have any real plans as to what I wanted to do, but all I did know that education, it just wasn't working for me. So I thought the best thing for me was to leave that environment. And I think if you asked, or if I asked anybody, my teachers from high school at the time, what I would kind of go on to do, they would probably tell me that you wouldn't really make much of yourself. And I think in at one point I did actually get told that I wouldn't amount to much because of my behaviour, my attitude towards education at the time. So I think that was a kind of, I think that put me off education as well, because I was stereotyped, and I was made to think that education really wasn't for me, it just wasn't my thing. And other people could see that as well. So after leaving Leeds Building College, I did get a few certificates, but not enough to allow me to go into the industry and, get some work doing joinery. And I also wasn't really sure that at the point was really what I wanted to do anyway. Now, toying with the idea of the military was something that was always on the back of my mind. Just before I left school, I thought about joining the military. I didn't really know the different areas within the military that I could kind of apply for and go into, but all I knew was that could potentially be an option for me, and it also gave me a wage, so I would get paid. And coming from my family background, it was a case of we needed to ensure that we was doing something after school, whether that be work or further education. So leaving college, I decided to join the military. I actually joined the Royal Signals at the time, and it's quite funny because at this point I was looking to do something technical, but I didn't really know what it is that I wanted to do. But nevertheless, I joined, and I got accepted. I started training, and I realized soon after joining and starting the training that this was another environment where I would have to listen to instructions, abide by those instructions, and there was also the educational element in there as well, under much stressful circumstances as opposed to an education environment. And then you also had the physical aspect, which really didn't bother me at the time. So in the military, I had a few run-ins with the staff at the time, because my attitude was the same as my attitude when I was in school, and it really didn't serve me well. So I decided to pack in the military, stop the training, and discharge from the military, because I, at the time, wasn't ready, or realised that I wasn't ready to proceed with that route in my life. So with no real plans, I was at an impasse again. I returned home, and at this time I was still living at home with my parents. And I didn't really understand or know what I wanted to do. I had no career aspirations. As I've said multiple times, education really didn't seem like it was fitting to me. So you can see already at that age, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And if you guys are already in there looking at pursuing a career in cybersecurity, I really take my hat off to you. And now I also think that some of the friends at the time that I hung around with also was an influence to me, and that didn't help as well. Nevertheless, my older brother, he was working already, and he managed to get me a job at Morrison's supermarket as a customer service advisor. So I was really grateful for that. I was now earning a wage and working full time as a customer service assistant. I worked there for 4 years, and over the time I realized that this role wasn't for me. Although I picked up many skills in terms of dealing with customers, so customer service skills, organization skills, timekeeping, and all the rest of it, and that helped me moving forward. Working at a supermarket in that environment wasn't for me. I knew that I was destined to do more, but I didn't really know how to get there, and I still didn't really know what it is that I wanted to do. I just couldn't put my foot on it. So after not enjoying my role at Morrison's, however, working there for 4 years, in that time I had a little girl who's now becoming a big girl. I moved out of my family home and got my own place, and suddenly I had so much more responsibilities, and this was all by the time I was turning 18. I had all these responsibilities. My child came along when I was 19, 20. But I had all these responsibilities, so it wasn't just a case of being able to walk out of a job or quit a job and look for something else, because I had bills to pay and I had bellies to feed and a roof to keep over my head. So life became a lot more serious, and I really started to see how much I didn't know. Nevertheless, towards the end of the 4 years at Morrison's, I decided to leave that position because I really wasn't enjoying it, and it was getting to a point where it was becoming stressful. And when I left, I decided to go back into education. Now, this was a big step for me because, as I've already mentioned, I was kind of made out to think that education wasn't really my forte. So really going back into education was difficult, not only because of that, but because I also, as I said, I had bills to pay, and I had mouths to feed. So, I also had to find a way to provide for my family, as well as deal with the educational element. I went back to college to get my A-levels, but I had to do my AS levels first and then go on to do my A-levels. So all in all, I went back to college for 3 years, and that was to study media. Now, I chose media because at the time I really enjoyed the acting element. I really enjoyed media as a whole. I really enjoyed television. So at the time I thought that maybe this could be a career for me, and I gave it my all because I knew that something had to change in order for me to have a successful career. So I did really well in media, and across the 3 years it was difficult trying to provide for my family and get my qualifications in media. Nevertheless, I did well in those, and I passed my AS levels and A levels, and I'm not too sure if they're still called that now. They may be, they may not be, but essentially those qualifications would allow me to then go on to either get a job in the industry or go on to university. Now, still at the time, while everybody was thinking about going to university, or at least everybody in my class, that was studying media. For me, that wasn't an option. That was, in one year and out the next. And that's because of the educational element. Even though when I did the 3 years, or as I was getting through the 3 years, I really started to find that I wasn't enjoying education a lot more. And maybe that's because the environment was a little bit different to school. And maybe that's because I was doing something that I enjoyed a little bit more. So I really started to enjoy the educational element a little bit more. However, university for me, it just seemed like a word. It didn't seem like it would be possible for me. And the reason being is because of the stereotyping from first school. I kind of got it into my head and thought that I'm not capable of doing that. And also, I wasn't too sure I'd be able to educate myself at that level. None of my immediate family members have been to university or got degrees, so I don't really have anybody to look up to in that respect. So if I was going to do that, then I would be the first person doing that. So for me, university at that time wasn't really an option. So coming to the end of my 3 years, other than actually looking at going into the media industry, I decided to embark on a different type of challenge, and that was to join the military again. I'm a few years older. I think at this point I was around 20, 21. I've got a fairly newborn child, and I want to challenge myself. I've always been good with fitness, as I mentioned earlier, so that wasn't a problem. But I was really seeking something. It was a challenge, and the military has always been something in the back of my mind, and always been a kind of what if I actually did it? How far could I take it? What could I achieve? What could I do? And it was also something for me that didn't really require a lot of qualifications. So for me, it was a good entry point that would not only get me paid, but would allow me to, potentially get a career out of and learn obviously learn new things. So at the time, I looked at joining the Royal Navy, so slightly different to what I did before. However, at the time, there was a backlog, and that meant waiting time. And I think at the time it was about maybe a year backlog. So that would have meant that I had to wait a year. And I didn't have time on my side. I was finishing college. I needed work. I needed to be getting paid. So I decided to look at something a little bit more challenging, or something a lot more challenging rather, and that was the Royal Marines. And there was no waiting list there, and that's expected, given how hard, first and foremost, it is to get in there, and how hard it is to actually complete your training and become a fully fledged Royal Marine and get your Green Beret and etc. So I decided to go for the Royal Marines. That was a very testing time for me. It took me about a year to get through the process and complete everything to actually get into the 9 months training program. However, I did pass that. Part of that was a 3-day potential Royal Marine course, which was very difficult, and especially coming from a civilian life and trying to get into the Royal Marines. But nevertheless, I did pass that, so that was a great achievement for me. And at the time, I was really onto something, or thought I was really onto something. The Royal Marines was kind of my focus, and I had nothing else in my mind that I wanted to do apart from be a Royal Marine and complete that 9 months training, and get out there and do my job. After getting into training, I was based down south at the Royal Marine Commando Training Centre down in Lympstone. and that's where all the recruits go for the 9-month period to do their training. A few months into the training, I came off of an exercise. They called it a wet and dry routine, and my chest was rather tight. I was not struggling to breathe, but it was noticeable when I was doing physical activity. So I decided to go and see the medic at the time, and shortly after seeing the medic and carrying out a few tests, they came to a conclusion that they would discharge me medically, and they put it down to asthma. Now, I'd be lying if I said I didn't shed a tear, because I really thought at the time I was onto something and I really wanted to be a Royal Marine. And also when they told me it was asthma, I was a little bit annoyed because I had not had asthma since I was 8 years old. I kind of grew out of the asthma phase. So being discharged for that, it was really, it was sad. It was sad. It was a sad time. I was upset, and I found myself at an impasse again, because I didn't really know what was next. I didn't have any plan B. I didn't know what else I could do. So I returned home up here, West Yorkshire in Bradford, and I had to plan what I wanted to do next. And I was so sick and tired of doing these different things and kind of them leading to nowhere, for me at least. I really decided to sit down and understand what my strengths were, what my qualities were, and try and use that to my advantage to get a job or go on to something different. So I returned home, and one of the things I was toying with before I joined the Royal Marines was to set up a business, and that business was a commercial and domestic cleaning company. So I actually went on to do a business plan and set up the business. The business was successful. It ran for a number of years. And also in line with that, I took the bold step to apply for university. I had my A-levels. I was more than capable on paper to get into university. So I thought maybe I should take this bold step and do it, because when I sat down and really thought about what I was good at, all that kept coming back to me was computers. I'm good with computers. Now, exactly what with computers, I wasn't too sure, but all I knew was I could burn CDs at the time to disks. I could install hard drives, I could install RAM and all that sort of stuff. So I knew that computers was something that I could probably do. So I looked at a few courses at university, and the courses I looked at were at the university, or Bradford College rather, University Centre, and they did degrees in line or in partnership with other universities. And at the time, the degree that I looked at was with Teesside University. The degree was Computer Networks and System Support. It was 3 years full-time or 6 years part-time. So I applied, and I applied for the part-time role because I was running the commercial and domestic cleaning company. And on top of that, I also applied for another position, which was as a stonemason. So that would be fitting gravestones and stuff like that. Now, that role was initially meant to be a role that would just give me extra income to, provide for my family and pay the bills. However, when I actually started doing the role, as time went on, I really started to enjoy the role. I really started to enjoy what it was about and the people that I was working with. So I was not only running a business, I was working as a stonemason and I was attending university. Now, I'll just give you a little bit of background about university and how that process started for me. So I applied for the university, as I said. I was invited to an interview where I spoke with the lecturers, and the lecturers told me about Microsoft, they told me about Cisco, they told me about certifications, and they also told me what would be expected of me as an individual on the course. Now, looking back, I recall that 70% was something that was repeatedly mentioned in terms of passing Cisco coursework and passing the course overall with good results. They mentioned switches, they mentioned routers, they mentioned things like that, and all of that didn't make sense to me at the time. So when I was sat in the interview, my eyes glazed over a little bit, and I walked away from the interview not knowing whether this was a right move for me. Nevertheless, I decided to look at the modules, and see what was covered in each of those, and decide, let's just take this step and go for it and see what happens. I also could, at the time, use the grants that were available and the student loans, etc., that were available to supplement my income to help me get by while I was studying. Now, initially, as I say, I started part-time, so because of work, I thought the best idea would be to take the course over 6 years. When I first went into the first lecture on the first day, we received the timetable, and I soon realized that maybe I could work full-time and study full-time, or at worst, work part-time and study full-time. So I put in a request to the lecturers to actually move from the part-time course to the full-time course, so that I could not only complete the course in 3 years as opposed to 6 years, but I could still work and study full-time, as still work and study full-time as well. So yeah, work full-time, study full-time. I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I at the time thought it would be achievable, so I did it. So I moved to the 3-year full-time course, and throughout my time over the 3-year course, the stonemason job was going well up until the 2nd year of my course, and then the company decided to lay people off, so I ended up losing my position there. The cleaning company was going well. We won awards at the time for the business and how well it was doing. However, we had a struggle sometimes employing people to do the work. So there was only so much that we could take on. And my idea of running the business was not to actually work for the business, but to just run the business. So I think running into the 3rd year, or the end of the 2nd year of university, I decided to pack that business in and call it a day, because it wasn't something that I wanted to do long term. The computing aspect was something that I wanted to do long term. So I found myself at a position again where I was studying, and yes, I had the grants and the loans to supplement and help with the income, but income had drastically dropped because I was no longer running my own business, and I was no longer working as a stonemason. So I had to find another way to get some income. So I actually applied for a job with the ambulance service, and again, it was more for the income, but at the same time, I enjoyed the role, and I managed to learn a lot of new skills. That role worked out for only a couple of months actually, and the reason being, I was coming towards the end of my 2nd year in university, and I started to get my grades back for the 2nd year. Now, I'll just backtrack a little bit. So the 1st year, my grades were excellent, I think 70 and above. were my grades. And the second year, I was doing well and getting good grades as well. And I believe I was getting 70 and above, or high 60s and above. And on one particular occasion, because I was focusing more on personal life and work and stuff like that as opposed to education, I realised one of my grades had dropped. And now my intention was to get a first class with honours. And I decided that if I was to get that, then I would have to sacrifice something. So I ended up leaving the ambulance service to solely focus on my education for the last year, given that it was going to be the hardest year, and just live off what I could in terms of the grants and the loans. So it was difficult, but it was doable. Just now, as I said, I wanted to get a first class with honours. When I first started the degree, I knew that I'd be paying a FD fee for the course, upwards of £30,000. So it was in my best interest to do as good as possible. Now, I went in with the intention that I would get anything over 70% would be acceptable for me. Anything under 70%, even though still good, and considered a pass, would not be good enough for me. So my intention was to always do my best and achieve over 70%. And I did just that pretty much with all of my coursework that I did and all of my modules. And I ended up finishing university with a first class with honours in computer networks and system support. And I think my overall result as a whole was around 95%. So one of the highest on the course. So I was really made up with that, and to actually be the first member in my immediate family to graduate with a degree was a massive achievement for me. And also, it was an achievement to myself in that I proved that I could do it. I was told so many times that I wouldn't be able to do it. I told myself that I wouldn't be able to do it, and then I went and did it. Not only passed it, but I pretty much smashed it, to be honest with you. So this was a turning point in my life, because throughout that 3 years, I really enjoyed education. I really enjoyed what I was studying. So I came to realize that maybe I didn't previously enjoy education because I wasn't learning stuff that I was interested in. Because I found that doing the 3 years of the computing degree, I found it so interesting. I was so curious about everything. I wanted to learn everything. I was going to the library and sitting in there and learning. And for anybody that I went to school with, whether that be teachers or other students that I was in school with, was to look back or look at me doing those sort of things, would think, wow, that's not the Kelvin I knew. And it was a shock to myself as well. So, to me, it was a real turning point in my life to do that and get my degree. Moving forward, as I was finishing up my degree, I applied for a few positions within computing, not necessarily focused on cybersecurity, although my final year project was based around cybersecurity and Cisco technologies. I applied for whatever position I could get. I needed the income, and my circumstances were slightly different to some of the students that, still lived at home and didn't really need to worry about that. I went to a few interviews, I got a few job offers, and a few of those job offers really tried to undermine my capabilities and the capabilities of any graduate graduating with a computing degree and a first class honours at that. And the reason why was because in terms of salary, there's an expectation of what a graduate should be looking to get for certain areas of work once they graduate. And I was applying for network engineering positions and some support positions, and some of the salary expectations that were coming back were severely under what was expected on the market. So some of these companies were trying to undermine graduates and give them lower than expected salaries, and I was aware of this. So obviously those jobs that came back with those type of offers, I just rejected flat out. Nevertheless, I did get a suitable offer for a position with a managed service security provider locally, and I accepted that position. Now that position was straight into cybersecurity, so working as a managed service security provider, we would be responsible for managing the security aspect of customer products and hardware. So, you know, anything from firewalls to working with vendors such as Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, you name it. Whatever the customer had security related, we would likely be working with that and supporting them on requests and tickets, etc. So for me, that was a real entry into cybersecurity and allowed me to start learning more about the different vendors, more about how cybersecurity works within the industry. Because looking back at my degree, at the time it covered everything that was required. We focused a lot on Cisco, we focused a lot on routing and switching, so the networking element, and we had the option, which I took in the second year, to start focusing on other areas. So my area was security because I wanted to focus on security. So the skills I learned from university and the foundational knowledge that I got really helped me navigate into cybersecurity and start picking up additional elements to learn. Now, as I said, we focused a lot on Cisco and routing and switching. When I started working for that company, a few months after, I managed to complete and attain my CCNA routing and switching certification. That really helped me solidify what I know in terms of routing and switching and the foundations that are required to build on other areas. Now, still looking on the market for different roles, and why I did that at the time, I think I was just curious as to see what was out there. I came across a role for Cisco, or actually to work for another company on behalf of Cisco, but with the intention to go on to work full time for Cisco. So this position was a contracting position. However, it wasn't contracting in a sense where you would be working on behalf of Cisco. It was more a position where we would be training for Cisco. So the position was to train for 6 months on Cisco security solutions, and then we would be placed in different locations to work for Cisco full time. So there was a few challenges with this position, and one was the fact that you would be required to work down south because one of the offices at Cisco is down south, and I had a family up here, and that would mean I would have to work out how I could actually make that work. The other challenge was that the position I was actually applying for was to work for Cisco eventually after the 6-month training, but in Belgium. So not here in the UK, in Belgium. Now, all I knew really was Cisco. I really enjoyed Cisco products, really enjoyed learning Cisco technology, and given the opportunity, I really wanted to work for Cisco. It was a huge step for me and for any graduate, if given the chance to work for a global company such as Cisco. And if anyone was going to try that, it was going to be me. So I didn't know the answers to the challenges that I just mentioned. Nevertheless, I tidied up my CV, I wrote a cover letter, and I sent both of those off to apply for this position. A few days later, while working, I received a call from the contracting company. At the time, they were called Computer Network Defence. I still think that they're called Computer Network Defence. So shout out to those for putting me on. And they wanted to interview me. And long story short, the interview process was a few interviews, making sure I understood the requirements and them getting to know me. And one of the interviews was a call with a Cisco employee to kind of quiz me a little bit about Cisco and to understand a little bit more about me. After that process, I was offered the job, and I still didn't know the answers to the challenges that I mentioned, so I'm moving to Belgium after the training. Nevertheless, I accepted the position. I handed in my resignation notification to the company that I was working for, and they knew really at that point they couldn't match, offer me any sort of salary increase or benefit that would entice me to stay with them, given the company that I was moving to. So I left the company with the intention of going to work for Cisco after the 6 months training. So I was then faced with another challenge of how to actually get myself down south. Would I take my family down south with me? How would that work because of school and work, etc. up here? Or would I go down south by myself and get a little place down south while I carry out the training? So what I decided to do was get a house share, and I rented a bedroom down south. And down south is quite expensive to rent alone. So the bedroom I was renting at the time was £500 a month, so it was quite expensive. And considering up here you can get houses, whole houses for £500 a month, and mortgages for that sort of price. Nevertheless, I really wanted to work for Cisco. I really wanted to do this, so I decided to get a bedroom for myself, rent a bedroom, while I was working down there. And what I would do was Monday to Friday, I would go into the Cisco office and do the necessary training and work that was required. And then on the Friday after finishing, I would travel back up north, up to Bradford, home to see my child. And that trip alone, the round trip alone is it's 3.5 hours one way, and that's not even including traffic. So sometimes on a Friday on the M1, traffic would be quite bad. So sometimes it would take me 4.5 hours just to get home. Nevertheless, I did that for the 6 months, and then on a Sunday I would travel back down, do the journey again, so that I could be in work on Monday. Now, nearly completing the 6 months, we were told, I think there were around 15 of us in total that were looking at getting positions with Cisco once this training was completed. We were told while on the Isle of Man, delivering presentations to customers, that we would be laid off as contractors because there was some sort of shortfall within Cisco and they were laying people off, and we were included in that. Fortunately enough for me, I was given the opportunity to carry on with Cisco, but the requirement was to conduct another 6 months training, and this time that training would be in Poland. The only difference here is that I would be considered a full-time Cisco employee straight away. So I was left with some time to think about this and decide whether I wanted to accept that position, because that meant traveling away for 6 months to Poland. And again, I was faced with the challenge of what would happen with my family. Would I take them? Would they stay here in the UK? Now, given that it was Cisco and I really wanted to work for Cisco still, nothing had changed, and I'd invested a lot of time and effort into trying to get into Cisco, I decided to accept that position, and long story short, I moved out to Poland by myself for that 6 month period to conduct another 6 months of security training. Everything was paid apart from food, so food I had to get for myself, but Cisco provided accommodation. It was lovely accommodation at that, and throughout the 6 months I had the best time ever, meeting new people, which are now my colleagues and working at different places in Cisco around the world, and just enjoying my time in Poland. Really enjoyed the traveling aspect, traveling to different places within Poland, and enjoyed the training that I was receiving. Now, the requirement was to complete that training, but also to get certifications to prove you would be capable of carrying out the role moving forward. And the role was to work as a security consulting engineer once the training had finished, or at the time it was called a NCE, so a network consulting engineer. I met all the requirements. I attained my CCNA security certification in the 6 months. I attained my CCNP routing and switching certification in the 6 months, and I also attained my Cisco Certified Design Associate, or CCDA, in the 6 months time that I was there. My time there was solely focused mainly on training while I was at work, and then I would spend a lot of time in the evening training for those certifications as well, which is why I managed to achieve those. So I was kind of made up with myself that I'd achieved the certifications and also met the requirements to go on to full-time employment with Cisco as a security consulting engineer. I returned back to the UK. There was no requirement now for me to work in Belgium. I returned back to the UK and joined the UK and I security team, which is where I still am today. Fast forward, still working for Cisco, and I am now a security consulting engineer. I started off as an associate security consulting engineer, but I am now a security consulting engineer, and now leading projects for customers on my own, and delivering those on behalf of Cisco. When I first started the role as an associate security consulting engineer, I was assigned a mentor, and a really good mentor at that. Shout out to Simon for that. He showed me the ropes. He showed me kind of how projects should be run, how we typically deal with customers, and kind of carry out the role basically. So we're really fortunate for that, because coming into that role, it was very daunting. Although you've done these certifications and done the training, actually applying that now for customers is where the real work starts. So for me, that was a daunting aspect. So being assigned a mentor and seeing that done, working alongside my mentor, was a great benefit. So my mentor stuck with me for some time until I was comfortable to, as I said earlier, start leading projects by myself and doing things by myself. In that time, I have managed to travel to a few places around the world. I've been to New York, I've been to New Jersey, I've been to Singapore, I've been to a number of places in Europe, and that's all to carry out project tasks, see customers and stuff like that. So I've really enjoyed my role. I still enjoy my role now. It's great, and maybe I'll touch a little bit more on what I do a little bit later on when I'm answering some of the questions. What I do now outside of work is, so I work for Cisco full time, and I am also doing a master's degree in cybersecurity. So I'm nearly finishing that now. I'm at the dissertation phase, and I'm also doing that master's degree full time as well. So things are quite challenging at the moment, and I really don't have a lot of time to, a lot of spare time to do as I please, because I spend, pretty much all day, Monday to Friday, working, so 9 till 5:30, and then I'll go on to studying for my master's degree as well. It's challenging, but at the same time, it's doable. Because I plan accordingly and make sure that I get done what I need to get done. And then obviously I've got the personal side, and I also do things like this. So I do a lot of talks. I'm a content creator on YouTube. I do a lot of things like that outside as well. So I am really quite busy. So that's in a nutshell kind of how I started out on my journey up until now. If there's anything that is not clear or anything you want me to elaborate on a little bit further, whether that be my personal journey or whether that be my degree or even my role that I'm doing now, and we don't cover it in the upcoming questions, then feel free to drop me a comment in the comment section. Email me or reach out to me on any of the social media platforms that I will share at the end of this video. But hopefully that's been a good insight into my background and how I came to get to being a cybersecurity professional. Now, the reason I kind of gave you that big speech about 16 years old up until now is because I understand that everybody has different journeys and different paths in life. Not everybody has a path that plans out the way that they want it to plan out. And if anybody can do it, then it can be you. If I can do it, then you can certainly do it. I wanted to show you that my path being so different and taking so many different steps to get to where I am today, it's still achievable to do. If you really want something, you can go for it. Sometimes it just takes time. In my case especially, it took time for me to really understand what it is that I wanted to do. But just know that you will get there at some point in your life. It may be later than me, it may be before me. Most of you guys already looking at studying cybersecurity and already in college doing just that. You're on the right path, especially if it's something that you're really interested in and want to actually get a career out of. So again, I take my hat off to you. But yeah, hopefully you take what I've just told you and understand that it's okay for everybody's journey to be different. It's okay to understand that, your friend's journey may be slightly different to your journey. Your path might be slightly longer to somebody else's path, but just know that if you really want to achieve the same thing, all those paths will meet in the middle, and you can do that. So now I want to get on to some of the questions that have been sent in. So I'll just get these up now, and hopefully I can answer these for you in the best possible way. So the first question is, I am interested in cybersecurity. Where do I start? Now that's quite a vague question. And I understand where it's coming from because you're not in the industry yet, so you don't really know where to begin. There's so many different routes, there's so many different avenues. As I've just pretty much told you, my kind of route into cybersecurity was totally different to how I expected it to be, and how typically one's route into cybersecurity would be. But where I would say to start would be to really understand what sector of cybersecurity you want to be in. So there's many different sectors. There's what I do now. So I'm doing consulting and engineering. So my work involves providing consultation to customers, and the engineering side is actually deploying those solutions for the customers. So my typical work involves planning, designing, and implementing. So although I work in cybersecurity, working on security solutions for Cisco and our customers, I work primarily focused on consulting and engineering. Now, there's other roles within cybersecurity, such as incident response. There's maybe penetration testers. There's maybe analysts. There's many different areas in cybersecurity, too many to actually name on here. So when you ask the question, where do I start? You first really need to understand which area of cybersecurity you want to get into. Once you understand that area, then you look at the requirements typically required for a graduate to get into that area. Are you required to have a certain degree? Are you required to have a certain grade from your degree? Whether that be a first class, a 2-1, 2-2. Are you required to have certain certifications? Are you required to have certain soft skills? So, organizational skills, communication skills. Are you required to have any of those? Are you even required to have a certain amount of work experience? So only when you decide or work out which sector of cybersecurity you really are interested in and want to go into, then can you start to work out how you actually get in there. So to summarize, start off by working out which area of cybersecurity you want to get into. That's where you start. That's where it all starts. Next question. What are the key areas I need to be learning now to become a cybersecurity professional? Now, cybersecurity professional, or being in the cybersecurity industry, I always say is in addition to knowing the fundamentals. One of the key areas you need to start to focus on, if you're not already, is the fundamentals of networking. So you need to understand IP addresses, you need to understand ports and protocols, you need to understand encryption. They're key areas you need to focus on. So fundamentals is where you need to focus. Once you understand the fundamentals, then you can look at more specific areas. So, within cybersecurity, do you solely need to focus on encryption? Do you need to focus on, technologies such as VPN technologies? Are you focused on, firewalling technologies or intrusion prevention systems? All of that, or everything within cybersecurity or any other field, collaboration or whatever it may be, requires that you know the fundamentals of networking. Because if you don't know what an IP address is, how are you going to input a ACL for a firewall or an access control list to block something on a firewall if you don't know what an IP address is? How are you going to block a particular port or understand if there's an attack occurring on a particular port using a particular protocol. So you first need to understand the fundamentals of networking. That's one area, key area I would recommend that you focus on. Another area would be to focus on coding. So coding is out there now. It's known now that, you know, engineers or professionals in the industry will benefit from knowing coding, whether that's Python or Ansible or JSON, whatever language it is. I would say focus on coding. And again, use those fundamentals of networking to supplement the coding that you learn. So they're key areas that I would say focus on. But fundamentally, networking, foundations, start off there. That's the key area. Once you've got that, you can then branch out to different areas. And if it's cybersecurity, then you can branch out to that. If it's collaboration, you can branch out to that. If it's other areas such as wireless, then you can branch out to that. Next question. Where did you get your motivation from, and how do you stay motivated to learn? Now, motivation is a big thing for me, and the reason being is because you've heard my journey. It's one thing telling you about my journey, and then there's another thing actually going through that and experiencing that. Now, my journey has been difficult, and to get to where I am today, it's not been easy. It's not been a typical journey of from school to college to university, and then from university into work as a cybersecurity professional. You know, I've took those different routes that have guided me in different directions. Things have worked and things haven't worked. So my motivation comes from being at the bottom and not having. You know, I've been there where it's been difficult to put food on the table. It's been difficult to provide for my family. It's been difficult to even work out how I'm going to get by the next day. So the fact that I've really found something that I enjoy doing, I'm really good at what I do, and the fact that I've been at the bottom, I would say, really gives me that motivation to continue to excel and do the best that I can to have the best things that I could possibly have, and to also to provide for my family. Because, as I said, none of my immediate family went to university and got degrees. I'm the first one to do that. I'm now doing a master's degree and may even go on to do a PhD after my master's degree. I want my children to look up to me. I want them to see that it can be done, and I also want my children not to make the same mistakes or go down the same road that I did in school and after school, because I've been there. I know what it's like. So if I can do what I can do to show my children that it's possible, then that's what I will do. So my children are also my motivator, and my lovely fiance is also my motivator as well. She's also doing a master's degree as well. We have a family, we both work, we know how difficult it is, but yet we both aspire to have more, do more and be more. So she is also my motivation as well. I think also my motivation is the fact that in school I was told that I wouldn't amount to much. I kind of got it into my head that actually maybe education's not for me, maybe I'm not capable of doing that. And the fact that I've done that now and proved to myself that I can do that, and also proved to those naysayers that I wouldn't be able to do that, gives me the motivation to carry on and to share my knowledge as I do with you and everybody else that follows me on my social media platforms and YouTube, to show them that it can be done. Regardless of the path that you take, if you really want something, it can be achieved, and regardless of what other people say, you can do it. So that's also my motivation. And kind of just leading on from that, what I said about sharing my knowledge with those that follow me on my social media platforms and YouTube. I get a lot of people reach out to me that are fortunate for the information that I provide, because they don't have anybody else to look up to. Like I didn't have nobody to look up to or to go off from when I was getting a degree. That was kind of my own path that I had to dig out, and also getting into the industry. So, I do it for those people that have nobody to look up to. I do it for the people that look like me, who you would typically not think would be a cyber security professional, or doing something like this. And I get messages like that a lot from people that are just happy to see people like me that are doing it and can prove that it can be done. And I think that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me going as well. Those messages, those people that are looking up to me, that keeps me going as well. So that's really where I get my motivation from. It comes from a lot of different areas, but all that bundled together really keeps me going. And for me personally as well, doing what I do, I love doing what I do. I love technology. I love security. I love the IT industry as a whole. So I'm curious about a lot of things. There's so many things that I want to learn. There's so many certifications that I want to get. There's levels that I want to reach in employment. There's places I want to travel around the world. So for me, that's a motivator as well. Work and the learning aspect. Yes, the learning aspect. I wouldn't have said that when I was 16 years old, but the learning aspect is something that keeps me going as well. So hopefully some of that resonates with you, or will resonate with you moving forward in your journey. But that personally is what keeps me motivated. Next question. If I do a degree in cybersecurity, what other computing careers are transferable? So as I kind of alluded to earlier, typically you'll start off with knowing the foundations of networking and computing before you delve off into different areas within IT, whether that be wireless or cybersecurity or collaboration, whatever it may be. Getting a degree in cybersecurity definitely is transferable to many different areas, and not just within computing. So if we talk about computing first, using cybersecurity to using your cybersecurity degree to get a job in networking, it's definitely not going to restrict you from doing that. Cybersecurity as a whole is covered in a lot of technologies these days. It's embedded in technologies, and it's an important aspect of computing and within the corporate world. So having those cybersecurity skills is definitely going to be transferable into many other computing careers, whether that's pre-sales, where you're not hands-on necessarily with technology or cybersecurity, but you're more looking at selling products and solutions. You can use those skills from cybersecurity to add that value and demonstrate, how these products can be secured or further secured. Wireless aspect, as I say, you can go into being a wireless engineer, and there's still elements of security there. When you connect to a wireless environment, maybe your home network, you have to enter a password to get on. All that in itself is security as well. So definitely cybersecurity is transferable into pretty much every other computing area you can think about. There may need to be additional training for yourself to kind of pick up areas that you don't know, but you can definitely use your cybersecurity degree to get into other areas of computing. Now, outside of computing, or not necessarily specifically related to computing, we've got things like cybersecurity insurance these days for organizations. So you could go along and decide after your cybersecurity undergraduate degree to go do a law degree that's focused primarily on security or the law within the IT world. So focusing on data protection and things like that. You can go into teaching. So you can use that degree to go into further education to get, say, a PGCE, and then go into teaching and teach cybersecurity. So teach the things that you've been learning. So I think having a degree overall is never going to be a barrier to the things that you want to go on to achieve, even if it's not directly related to what it is that you've done the degree in. I know people that did degrees in areas that are not even related to computing, and they now work for Cisco. So I think what I'm trying to say is a degree will set you up, or it'll get you to the door, and then it's your motivation, it's you as an individual, it's what you know, it's what you're willing to learn, that will take you through that door and onto better things. Next question. What does a day-to-day work life look like? Main tasks and main duties. So I mentioned earlier, my working day is 9 to 5:30, Monday to Friday. That's my typical working days. Sometimes I may be required to work over if I am doing some migration work that needs to be done out of hours for customers. Sometimes I may have to work weekends. There's been times I've worked weekends where I've started work at 5 a.m. in the morning and carried on through till 1 p.m. There's been times where I've started a normal working day at 9 a.m. and not finished till 1 a.m. in the morning because of troubleshooting issues or issues that have resulted in troubleshooting. So it's fairly flexible. We do what we need to do to get the job done, but typically my working day is 9 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. Now, in a typical working day, I would start by opening my laptop, and bear in mind I work 100% remotely, so I'm not required to be in an office. I work at home. Before COVID, I would work at home, and then if I needed to go out and do some consultation with organisations, I would travel to their site, wherever that be around the world or in the UK. Given that COVID and the pandemic is still rife, my typical day will start by opening my laptop, checking my emails, and following up on tasks that may be outstanding that I need to complete. Now, I'm project focused, so as I said, we are a delivery team, so we plan, design and implement solutions for our customers. So a typical project will typically be engaged, depending on the project, in a couple of projects. So right now I'm engaged in 2 projects at the same time. So I need to be able to manage those projects. There's project managers, but we're not micromanaged. We manage our time ourselves, and we make sure that our work is delivered to the customer as agreed per the contracts and timelines. So typically what we do is, if we're, say, at the planning phase, we will be doing a lot of consulting, a lot of remote calls on Cisco WebEx, or, after the pandemic, face to face, so that we can help the customer understand the solution that they've purchased and how it will be implemented into their environment. And then once that's been agreed, we spend time designing that solution, how it will look in the environment, so topologies and all that stuff there in terms of configuration, etc. So that normally involves a lot of work with documentation. So we'll carry out what we call high-level designs, low-level designs, network implementation plans, and stuff like that, test plans, etc., etc. So that's when we're normally at the design phase. And then once that's all been agreed and signed off, we will then implement that solution as agreed in the documentation. So that will normally involve getting hands-on in the engineering side of the role, so getting hands-on with the solution, and being a security consulting engineer. That's security products that I work with, so it'll be firewalls, next generation firewalls, IPSs, IDSs, VPN technologies, access control technologies, and stuff like that. So we will get hands-on with all those sort of solutions and implement that as agreed. And then once we've done that, we make sure we get sign-off on that from the customer, and then we disengage, sort of thing. So that's typically what we do in a day-to-day. That's typically what tasks involve. Sometimes I'll be sat on calls most of the day, so sat in conference calls, so WebEx meetings, or whatever the customer decides to use, discussing things, whether it's issues or solutions, or just discussing the project as a whole. And then I can't get very much done, and then some days I'll have less meetings and I'll be able to do more hands-on stuff. So it really depends. It really differs, really depending on the project you're on and at which stage the project is at. But that's typically what my day-to-day work involves. So it's important to note that as a security consultant engineer, my role involves consulting and engineering. So it's not purely hands-on. You're not 100% hands-on products all the time. There's things that need to be done before you get hands-on with the product as well. So next question. Prior to doing your degree, how much did you know about cybersecurity and computing? So cybersecurity, I knew pretty much nothing. Computing, I knew pretty much nothing. As I mentioned earlier, I knew the basics, so I knew how to maybe put a new RAM stick into a computer, maybe add an hard drive, install antivirus software on my mum's computer, install new software. So I knew what would be today considered basics, As I said, when I went for the interview to start my degree, when switches and routers and other technologies and hardware was mentioned, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what a switch was. I barely knew what a router was. I certainly didn't know what IP addressing was. I certainly didn't know what a firewall was. I didn't know how to configure a firewall. I didn't know how to configure a switch or a router, or anything in that matter of fact. If it had a graphical user interface, then I would try and work through things, but I hardly knew anything. So doing my degree really helped me kickstart my career and really helped me understand hardware from the very basics of computing, so what's inside a PC, to what's a switch, what's a router, what's a hub, what's a firewall, what's a wireless LAN controller, what's an access point, all that stuff, to starting to configure those elements. And then we start looking at features such as VPN, configuring VPNs, configuring firewalls, configuring a switch, configuring trunks and VLANs on a switch and stuff like that. So if you're in the same position and feel like you don't know a lot or know anything, that's okay. Everybody starts from somewhere. I started from that very position, as I've just mentioned, of going on to a degree. You guys are in college right now, so you're in a better position to get a kickstart and understand things before getting to degree level. But I went to degree level and hardly knew anything, so I had to really sit down and understand all these things while going through my degree. But it's okay. It's okay not to know everything. It's okay not to know anything. That's why you're in education. That's why you're embarking on this journey to learn these things. There may be other individuals on your course that know slightly more, or come across as they know a lot more than you, and that's fine. That's not you. I'll give you a story. When I first started my degree, there was one particular individual that stood out to me. And he stood out to me because he came in, and when discussing topics with lecturers, it was almost as if he knew everything already. And this was really daunting for me, because if he knew everything, I also thought to myself, what does everybody else know? Does everybody else know this much as well? And I don't know anything. But nevertheless, I carried on. I finished with one of the highest grades on the course, with the first class with honours, and that particular individual dropped out in the first year, never even completed his degree. So don't worry about anybody else. Worry about yourself. Worry about where you want to go. Worry about what you want to learn. Because, as I said earlier, your path is different to somebody else's path. Your path's different to your friend's path. Your path's even different to, your brother or sister's path. So just worry about yourself. Don't let not knowing what you think you should know get to you. Use that time while you're in education and you're not in the industry to go out there, do the research and learn as much as you can, because that will put you in a better position, not only for your grades and to achieve the best that you can throughout college and doing your degree, but also when you enter the industry as well. Next question. If you work all day, how do you find the time to keep up with your studies? So this has been very difficult for me. I embarked on my master's degree trying to take advantage of the COVID situation and being based primarily at home with work. So I thought I would be able to, work my 9 to 5:30 job and then get straight on to studying. This has not been as easy as I thought, because I do have a family. I have a 1-year-old son, so it's been difficult to do that, as well as spend time with my family as well. Nevertheless, I plan accordingly. So when I know I've got work, I work. So 9 till 5:30, I will work. And then after work, if I need to work over, then I'll work over. If not, then I'll do whatever I need to do study-wise to make sure that my work is done and submitted on time. I also make time for things like this, delivering presentations, delivering talks, and creating content on YouTube, as well as updating articles on my website. All that, again, takes time, and I plan for that. Now, I use every year I set goals. I've created templates that can be downloaded on my website, networkwizkid.com, and the link will be given to you at the end of the video and in the video description. But every year, at the end of every year, I will review the goals that I set for the year, as well as the 3 to 5 year goals. And then I will create new goals for the coming year and also see which goals I met and which goals I didn't meet. And this allows me to really stay focused in what I need to achieve, because when you're working and when you're studying and when you're so curious and want to learn everything, there needs to be a line, because it's so easy to start looking into different areas and get carried away with different areas. You really need to set goals and then set that time against those goals to achieve those goals. And then only when you've completed those goals, those realistic, tangible goals, you can then look to add more to your goals. Because it's so easy to get burnt out in this space, regardless of how much you enjoy what you do, whether it's the technology or your job or just the IT industry as a whole. It's so easy to become overwhelmed. It's so easy to get burnt out. One particular example, a few weeks ago, I had to complete a research report and submit that for my master's degree, and I found myself working through the night, literally through the night. So I was writing my research report up until probably 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I had work at 9 o'clock, so within a few hours from there. So it's difficult. You can use all the time that you have, which is what I do, but one thing I would say is plan accordingly. That's how I manage to do what I do. Even though it's difficult, I make sure I plan. Next question. If you were 18 again, what would you focus on within computing? If I was 18 right now, what I will focus on would be cybersecurity, because that's what I work in now and that's what I enjoy. That's what I have a passion for. I would focus on cloud computing, and I would focus on coding or programming. Now, all three of these areas are very important right now and are areas where organizations are focused on right now. Cybersecurity, there's a lot of exciting things going on in the cybersecurity world. There's a lot of issues in the cybersecurity world right now, from ransomware attacks and other hacks, other hacking events that are occurring. Cloud computing is a big one. You've got AWS, you've got Google Cloud. They're all huge areas at the moment. Companies are looking to leverage cloud environments to move from on-prem to off-prem, or to have a hybrid workplace. Especially now that the pandemic has happened, companies are having to rethink their strategy in how they can enable their workforce to continue to work in situations like this. And some of that involves moving their resources to the cloud. So cloud is a very interesting area right now. It's one area that I will be focusing on after I've completed what I need to complete. And then on to programming or coding. A lot of technologies these days are leveraging APIs. There's a lot of buzz around Cisco DevNet, SecDevOps, NetDevOps, DevOps in general. A lot of that involves a kind of hybrid approach to being a network engineer or a cybersecurity engineer, and also knowing how to program or use languages such as Python and Ansible or C++ or Ruby, whatever it may be, to develop scripts that make life easier. So I've done the same thing. You know, there's been scripts that I have used that have helped me in my day-to-day job. Probably bring down the time of a task that I was doing from weeks to days, or if not a day, you know, a few hours. So leveraging cloud technologies is a big one, and also coding is a big one I would focus on. Next question. What is the first question that you would expect to ask in a cybersecurity interview? Now, I'm a big advocate for learning, which you've probably already picked up on. If a company will not give me the time or allow me to develop myself to understand and learn new technologies, then it's probably not a company that I would like to work for. Because what you'll end up doing is you'll end up becoming stagnant, knowing what you know and knowing no more, knowing what you know to do the job and knowing no more. So the first question I would ask would be, do you give employees the time to either learn new things, whether that be on the job, or give them some sort of incentive to learn, or do you give employees time to step away to focus on new technologies and new developments, as well as certifications? And that's another thing I would also emphasize a point about certifications. Do you give employees a chance to take new certifications, and does that company pay for certifications? Because certifications are expensive, and often when you are taking new certifications, yes, you're doing it to improve yourself and what you know in your skill set, but also sometimes you're doing it because there's a requirement by the company for you to get certified. So it's benefiting the company. So if the company is going to pay for those certifications, then that's a bonus. If you have to pay for those out of your own salary, then to me that's not really, again, a job I would be looking to take. So yeah, definitely to summarize, I would be asking if there is opportunity to learn and develop myself. Next question. What's the best bit of advice you can give? So I'll give a lot of advice in this talk, but probably the best bit of advice I can give is keep working hard. Make sure you really take the steps to understand the cybersecurity industry, because that will help you direct where you want to go in terms of, you know, the job role that you want to take. Know that it's okay not to know everything. There's a perception, especially with people that work for Cisco, that they know everything. That's not the case. It's impossible to know everything. But make sure that you do or take the steps to learn what you need to learn to carry out your job role or to get the job that you want. And know that it's okay to fail. You're going to fail along your journey, whether that's not getting the grades that you require, whether that is failing a certification. That's okay, because failure makes you stronger. It's how you bounce back that matters. So if you don't get the grade that you really want, as I said earlier on, I didn't get a particular grade for one of the modules that I was covering that I wanted. I took the necessary steps to make sure that moving forward I did get the grades that I want. If you fail a certification, go back and look at the areas where you didn't do as well, and make sure you hammer out those areas until you know them inside out, and then go back and resit the exam. And then you'll find that you actually know more than you originally thought that you did. So know that it's okay to do that. So that's the best bit of advice I will give you. And I'd just like to say good luck and thank you for sticking with me today and listening to me. If there's anything I haven't covered or anything you would like me to elaborate on a little bit more, please do drop me a comment, reach out to me, reach out to Ben, and I will try to elaborate or answer anything that I may have missed. There may be something that I have missed, there probably is. There's probably a ton more questions that you have. That's fine. Again, just reach out to me and I'll do my best to answer them. But good luck on your journeys. Good luck in navigating your way into cybersecurity. Who knows? We may be working together at one point someday, whether that be at Cisco or another company. And keep learning. Thank you and goodbye.